All right, welcome everybody to another Winging It podcast. This one is a special one. So, without further ado, Andre, would you do the honors?
Yeah, because Andre was the one that kind of got this deal set up. So I don't know why I spoke in the third person. We'll forget
The
that.
people's champ, the rock.
But okay, so I talked about it in the last podcast and briefly because there was this mobile game that I played. It's called Loop the Distress Call. I don't know why I'm starting to fade out on that. Loop the Distress Call. It's a story-based text game. You're investigating basically you're investigating the disappearance of a ship, and you're making choices in kind of real time almost. I'm not going to spoil the secrets behind this because I already know part of how it goes since I got to play it. But we have the writer here, Essie,
Hello.
and I want to say lead developer, Align. Lead,
No, I'm not lead developer. I'm actually a game designer, but on this game, I scripted it. Let's
oh,
say
so you
let's
did
say
all
that.
the script. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. There we go. I was trying to figure that out, and I was like, either one way or the other, I'm going to find out if I say it incorrectly. If I'm right on the money, one way or the other, I'll find out. But but they came to join us today to talk about their game, which is currently out on iOS for what is it, 4.99 US.
I believe so, yeah. Or, the price of a coffee at Starbucks.
Yeah, those pricey costs. It will also be making its way to Android. On my channel, I'll do a video for it once it launches because I'll keep up to date with them about it. So, but that's it. Got a short list of questions here that are hopefully going to generate a lot of different conversation. And the first one I'm going to start with. Oh, before I even go with that, their development studio is Avenworks.
Yes.
You guys made like 6 or 7 games now.
Somewhere around that.
Um. Yeah.
I'm trying to
Something
count on
like.
my
Just
fingers.
like the seven.
Yeah. Me too.
I'm just going.
Because we released a lot of prototypes, and so not all the games were fully launched as well. So yeah, it's around this number.
Yeah, yeah, it's like 6. Okay, so Loop would be officially the sixth one. But I kind of like I've always been interested in video game development myself, and again, my moniker is the game idea guy, even though a lot of people hate that name. They're like, "Oh, you're the idea guy. You want to tell everybody how to run things, and then think you're going to get all the money." I'm like, no, that's not quite how I look at it. But okay, I understand that there are a lot of people that think that way. Like, I'll give you the idea, you pay me money. No, that's not how it works. But first question that we have up: what inspired the creation of Loop?
um,
Do you want to go first or should I?
um, Maybe I can introduce how I came to you actually, because we as back then we were just a small team, and we were not actually a studio. We were just doing it like as a hobby, and then we everyone at the company, well, at the company, in our team, really liked story based games,
Hmm.
and we played Lifeline. Do you know that game? It's a mobile game.
I've
It's,
heard of it, but I've never played it
mhm.
myself.
Well, back then we played that game, really liked it, but we thought we could maybe go a bit further on that. Also, we wanted to experiment on this type of game, and we wanted to see if we could do story-based game with someone, and then maybe start like a process where we could go to different writers and ask them to make story-based game if they wanted to. And so
Hmm.
that's how we came up with this idea, and that's how I came to Esty because I knew she wrote. Did I know that? I probably I just asked you, SP.
Well, I remember you asking, well, so to backtrack a little bit, I
Yeah.
remember you had asked on the gaming forums that we were on, because we all met
Yes.
on the, well, we all originally met on the BioWare gaming forums through
Yes.
Oh,
Mass
okay.
Effect, talking about,
Mhm.
stories and, love interests and, which choices did you make and which ending did you get and all sort of stuff. And then I believe the forums, I think by that point the forums had closed, and then we
Yeah.
kind of made our own little community just offsite. And you were working on Birdie Party. You had been working on Birdie Party.
Oh, right, right, right.
And then you
Yes.
had posted something that said like, oh, we need someone to do like small dialogue and like an
Mm-hmm.
actual like story for Birdie Party.
Yeah.
And I think it was me and one other person, because we were actually working on an anthology at the time.
Oh,
And
okay.
that other person had kind of passed up because she had her own like in real life work stuff that she needed to take care of, and other things that were going on. And so I said, well, I guess that leaves me. And so that's kind of how I got roped in. And I think I was person number 4 in our team, because there was our CEO, our
Yes.
CCO, and then there
Okay.
is you, and
Yeah.
then there is me. There were
Yeah.
literally just 4 of us as a
Okay.
Yes.
quote unquote company.
I was not a company yet.
I mean, you got to get your start somewhere.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Exactly.
mean, I mean, in all honesty, it kind of felt like we were just a bunch of people who got together and said, "Hey, let's start a band."
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
that happens a lot because that's how Galaxy Trail started with Freedom Planet, because that originally started off as a Sonic fan game, and it's just a bunch of people ended up getting together, and then they turned it into something else, and they ended up making a franchise off of it. So like it happens, like, and that's
Right.
one of those things I really respect, that people get together and do that. So
And then, so it was through Birdie Party that I ended up joining the team, and it was
Mm-hmm.
after we had done like the soft launch for Birdie Party, which I think was December of 2016.
Wow, that long already.
It's been a while. It's like either
Oh,
2015 or
wow.
2016.
Okay.
And that was when we soft launched that and was like, okay, so what's next? And then we started talking about like the text-based games. You guys told me about Lifeline, and I was like, I have
Mm-hmm.
never played Lifeline, but it feels a lot like a choose your own adventure,
Yep.
from like way back in the day. um, and it sounded but we also wanted to pull in elements of stuff like a Mystic Messenger. I don't know if you guys have played that
Yeah.
before, but it's one
Yeah.
of those like it's more like
Vis-
it's more like a
Visual
game that kind
novel?
of unfolds
Yeah.
through text messages.
Mm.
oh, okay.
Hmm.
I have a friend who played it, and every so often, like, I mean, I just kind of like in the middle of the work, her phone would go off, and I'd be like, "Oh, who messaged you?" It's like, "Oh, it's actually not someone. It's more like it's this game that, it messages you, and there are these." Um, I actually don't know the premise of Mystic Messenger, but she would go on about it, and
Ah,
if she
yeah.
missed the message, then she wouldn't be able to continue that story with that particular character.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Yeah, it's actually
There's
actually
an
pretty
app
good.
out. There's an app out that's actually similar to that. It's called Hook, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
stories are done through text. Like,
Yes.
so you get the text messages and it's a story. Like, it's not the same thing as a game because you're not making choices. You're just reading the
Mm.
story as it comes in. But yeah, like okay, I understand that premise now. Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, so that was kind of what we ran with. I wasn't familiar with either of those games, but I kind of got the gist of what they wanted to talk about. And that anthology that I mentioned earlier, it actually contains that anthology that the other person and I were working on. Actually, the short story that I wrote, the original Loop story, was in that anthology,
Oh,
and
okay.
it was actually unfolded through all of these timestamps, kind of like a journal or a diary. Um, of this lone engineer. You don't know their name, you just know their rank, and it's just watching them go through the process of trying to figure out why their ship is going haywire. And we thought, okay, we have a basic premise, we have an idea of where we want to go. This should be fairly easy. Famous last words.
Yeah. Basically, we
I'm not
thought
going to say I'm not going to say anything about that. I'm not going to say
basically
it.
we thought it's a like we already have the story, everything is already written, so it should be really easy. And then 3 years later, we,
3 years later.
yeah.
The SpongeBob meme.
um, and I was more familiar with like old school like MUDs and interactive fictions where like back in the day where like you got like a line of text in like MS-DOS and then you had to put in a command and then you
Yeah.
actually had to figure out like which command would actually make the game progress. I was more familiar with that stuff. So that was more of the premise that I kind of went with.
Yeah.
And of course the choose your own adventure books where if you
Mm.
choose this, go to page such and such. If you choose this, go to page this and that. And um, yeah, that's kind of what got it all started. And then it kind of took on a life of its own. I'm not gonna lie.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
just kind of the channel, the this conduit. I have nothing to do with it. It just kind of did its own thing.
That makes sense. Like that's kind of how a lot of people come up with like their best stories once they get started. They just kind of let the world create itself.
Yeah, it kind of propagated like bunnies.
I don't know what to say to that one. I'm going to let that go.
Well, I mean, like we would start with like one. I mean, we would start with like one storyline, and then it's like, okay, so there's you have these two choices, and it diverges. Kind of like the Robert Frost poem. Two paths
I,
diverge in the wood, and then all of a sudden those two paths then become four, and then eight, and then some of them join back
just
in, but then they
too
have
much multiplication
conditions.
there.
Yeah, there's a lot of multiplication, and I'm really not a math person.
It's just like one of those things where it's like, okay, we made this choice, but what if?
Yes, there's a lot of what ifs.
I mean, that's kind of what this game is like the ultimate what if. You just kind of, what if I make this choice? Where does this lead me? What if I make that choice? Where does this lead me? Which makes it a
Yeah.
lot of fun to go through it multiple times. Because especially if you're kind of like the type of person that likes suspense novels and stuff like that, making the multiple choices and going through every individual choice over and over again. Yeah, that can be something that
That's a
keeps you
really
hooked.
yeah. Um, I think back then I was also going through like a big frustration on some story-based games. Well, not big frustration, but more. I thought, can we make it more complex, make the story more complex if we just keep to the text. We just have text. We don't have graphics, so maybe we can some games just give you the illusion that you're actually choosing different paths, like you have different paths, and so sometimes you think, oh, I let this person die. What would have happened if I had chosen something else? And so you replay it, but then you see that there's some trick, and then the story doesn't change at all, and that's kind of disappointing when you do that. So
Yes.
yeah. So we thought if we keep the rest of the game really minimal and we just stick to the script, can we make the story more complex and then explore all the paths? And that was the gist of the project at the beginning.
Well, shoot. That answered a couple other questions that I had in here, so I can remove those real quick. But so we'll go on to the next question. And this is one I know a lot of people ask developers when they get the chance. But are there any characters in the story of the game that you hold a special attachment to?
Yes.
Oh, well,
All of them. Yes.
well, she's the writer, so
It's like not one individually, everybody,
Like
the
even the
whole thing.
peripheral ones. Oh my gosh. I mean, and this is where the bulk of my notes are because so I love Easter eggs. I mean, one of the things that I loved about being a gamer was getting um finding all these like Easter eggs or finding references and going like, "Hey, I remember that," or "Hey, I understood that reference." I mean, good heavens. One of the major characters in the game aside from our protagonist is her commanding officer, Commander Turgeon, and she is like her name. It's like the name itself isn't in direct reference to a specific person per se, but her name does point to her ancestral heritage or her ethnicity, which is a South Asian woman, and that's actually a nod to the current Ms. Marvel. Excuse me, Kamala Khan. I don't know if you guys read comic books, but she is.
Man.
I love her. I adore her. And I mean, and also, Kamala is also very scientific. She's very scientifically geared, so she knows about science and engineering and stuff like that. And one of the things that I wanted to do with the game was actually pull in as many. Well, I mean, you may have noticed that kind of almost subconsciously, like a lot of the major players in the game are they're women or they're female. And so, I mean, this is kind of where I kind of tread the line here, but when I was growing up, I didn't see a lot of representation of myself. I mean, I'm Chinese American. My parents were immigrants from Hong Kong. And so,
so you're also part Asian too. Hi.
Well, not fully. I am like completely Asian. Like,
oh, you're complete. See, I'm
yeah.
like, I'm like an eighth Japanese.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Maybe that's why we think alike.
I'm Asian too, by the way. You can't hear it, but I am.
Got outnumbered, Jay. I'm sorry.
I'm Southern. Southern. From Georgia.
We'll let you go. We'll let you go ahead and continue. I'm sorry for interrupting.
But so I mean, so I was trying to pull in as many. I was like trying to represent as many people as I possibly could, and especially the underrepresented and the marginalized. I actually specifically tried to actually in the original story. I mean, I may have mentioned this before, but the protagonist, you actually don't know the sex, gender, age, anything about the main character. And that was supposed to be like a blank slate for people to kind of be able to either project themselves or someone else in their lives that kind of fit that personality. So it was more of the, what goes on inside the head, which is funny in reference to this game. And I'm trying not to, I'm trying not to elaborate too much on it because that would be spoilers. But spoilers. That what's important is actually what goes inside the brain, inside your heart, inside your soul. So in the original story, you kind of just got a sex/gender for the main character, and that was kind of it. You kind of got a few peripheral details that like that she's like the kid sister of someone else who's also in the fleet, that she had lost her parents, so she's technically an orphan and stuff like that. But aside from that, all of those other labels that society tries to actually like think that tells us that are important, like what's like what's your race, what's your job, what's this, what's that, are kind of pushed to the side, and it's literally character focused. It's not all the peripherals and the labels that are put on the character, but the actual character.
The actual character themselves. Yeah.
So,
I get it.
I mean, one of the other major players in the game is the investigations commanding officer that you meet through like the emails and stuff like that. And depending on the path you take, she might actually talk to you directly. And the first name of that person, of the investigations commanding officer, is actually taken from the head librarian that I work under, because I work for the public library as well. So so her first name is taken from that because she is someone that I greatly admire, greatly respect. She's tough when she needs to be, but also a little bit of a rebel. She knows when to bend the rules when the situation calls for it. She's very neutral good. She's not strictly lawful good for you D&D players out there. And her last name is, again, it's a it's a pointer to her racial heritage. So Wu is a very common Chinese last name, but it is an homage to the actor Constance Wu. And at the time, she was talking about stuff for Crazy Rich Asians, and I can't remember which interview it was, but she was talking to somebody about the movie, and she had said this quote about building our own houses, how there were a lot of that she was a lot like me, where she didn't see herself represented in a lot of the popular media, and that she would have to, kind of essentially like headcanon herself or a character like herself into that universe. And so when she talked about building our own houses, as far as like Asians or Chinese representation in popular media, was actually just essentially taking those universes and going, you know what, you can keep them. We're going to build our own. And so that resonated a lot with me. And the last name is also an homage to this woman who was known as the First Lady of Physics back in like the 30s and 40s, I believe. Her name was Dr. Xianxiang Wu. She worked on the Manhattan Project. She would have earned a Nobel Prize, but she was restricted because she was, again, a woman. And so her two male colleagues got the prize, but she did not. She was the first person selected to get the Wolf Prize in physics, and the first woman to be given an honorary doctorate from Princeton in the field of physics, and also the first female president of the American Physics Society. So, I mean, there is, like I said, I like packing in Easter eggs, and like if you were to Google these sorts of things and whatnot, like there's like, again, actually it's a lot like the game, you kind of fall down this rabbit hole of discovery.
Okay.
On a more lighthearted note, the name of the chief medical officer, Doc, his name is Oscar Collins. That's a mashup of my two favorite male celebrities, Oscar Isaac and Misha Collins.
Okay.
He was supposed to play a bigger role in the game as a kind of benevolent, the sort of kind of not quite hostile person on the ship, but he didn't get a chance to do that very much. Well, depending on the path you take.
Okay. And that's a lot to unpack all at once.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. Like I said, I mean, this is how my brain works. I mean, this is the brain of a writer that, I mean, and I think this is how the game kind of ran away from me, because like it just kind of jumped off and went wee, and before I knew it, it had spread like the plague.
I can accept this plague. I won't die from it. At least this one won't leave me coughing up blood on the side of the road or anything. I'll be fine.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. No promise.
I mean, unless y'all got like some sort of a techno-organic computer virus in the game, then I'm screwed.
Spoilers.
No spoilers.
No spoilers.
I can answer the question too. I'm gonna make it short. My favorite character is Taskbot.
I can understand why you would like Taskbot. Taskbot comes off a little sarcastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Taskbot was well, originally I had designed I remember the very first time I had written something for Taskbot, and everyone was like, "Can you make it a little less machiney?" And I was like, "Okay," because I mean, originally I was thinking of like just like your general run of the mill like AI or VI or whatever you want to call it assistant, like a Siri or Alexa or something like that. And I was like, okay. I mean, like it kind of sounds like there's a personality, but it's very limited. And so, I mean, a lot of us on the team were Mass Effect players, and so I drew a little bit from Edie, who was in Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3, who had that sort of sardonic kind of edge to everything that she said.
It's all very cut and dry, but it's right to the point, and sometimes it's very hilarious.
Exactly. And I mean, there are some times when Taskbot will cut in and be like, "Yeah, no, that's on you. It's not on me. It's not on IT. It's not on Ensign Young. No, that's on you."
Like you did it.
Yep, you did it.
It's your fault.
You are owning this.
But no, don't pass the credit to me. It's all you. Okay, so we'll move on then. Um, Now, this will probably be pretty interesting to you, like if you guys have been interested in doing it. But is there a chance that Loop might end up on like other platforms, like Steam for PC, or possibly something like the Nintendo Switch?
We've talked about it. To be honest, we are trying to take it one step at a time because we already spent way too much time on this project. But yeah, just was it like last month we were talking about it. At the moment, we are working on the Android version, which is taking a bit more time than we expected, as usual. But yeah, we thought about it. We discussed it. And actually, see, I'm not the developer. We talked about it with the developer, and he said he would have a look at it. Hopefully, a, like a PC version for us would be really nice because I think it would fit the audience probably. Um,
Hmm. I'm pretty sure it would. I mean, if like stuff like Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links can be thrown on PC, and there are a ton of people playing that on PC and on mobile, like I could see Loop being put on PC, no problem. Especially since you're really just replacing the touchscreen with the mouse.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So we're trying to. We will have to see if everything works okay for PC. But basically, we could just port it. I think it would be okay if we just release it as is.
Okay.
So yeah.
Alrighty. Oh, that was a quick one to get out the way. Okay. Now this might be an interesting question. I'm pretty sure that you probably thought about it. But is there a possibility for more games that are in the same universe as
It's one for UST.
I mean, there's always the possibility. There's nothing in the works at the moment. I mean, we did tie in some of our other, do we get to call them IPs?
Yeah, I mean that they would be, yeah.
You know, like Birdie Party and Slash Run and stuff like that. I mean, Slash Run is technically supposed to be set in the same timeline as Loop. I think the protagonist for Slash Run was supposed to be from the same city or location as Ensign Young. I mean, there's all sorts of Easter eggs. I mean, for example, if you go, if you take a certain path, we have a couple of Easter eggs for Birdie Party in the game. But no, there's nothing in the works at the moment. But I mean, like the universe is so expansive that, well, can be expansive depending on the path you've taken. That I mean, there's always the possibility of it. Just nothing in the works at the moment.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, this has partially been answered, but there may be other answers to this that you would want to include. But what are some of your favorite video games?
Oh boy. Here, you go first,
that's.
Aline.
Oh my god.
She's like, yeah,
That's
let her
not-
go.
that's
Let her take the floor first, because this might not be as long.
That's the worst question. Like, we asked this question for job interviews at our company, and that's really a tough one. I feel bad for asking it. Uh, so we mentioned Mass Effect because ST and I met on the BioWare forum.
Mhm.
But to be honest, maybe I prefer Dragon Age Origins. To be honest.
Yes,
Yeah.
after that one.
Ah! Okay, I thought I was going to be lynched, so I'm
No,
happy
no, no.
with your reaction.
Look, we're
I,
people that believe in preferences. Like everybody has their preference. I'm not going to judge you for yours, even if I'm look. If I think an IP is trash, I'm not going to. I'm not going to judge you for your like of it. So
uh,
I'm not going to say Dragon Age because I like Dragon Age, but I'm just saying it in general. That's how I deal with it. But sorry for that side note.
so yeah, I really like Dragon Origin, and I came from like the Neverwinter games and everything. So I can mention those. But I also I like all sorts of games to be honest. I don't know what comes to mind. Like recently, we've been talking a lot about Katamari Damacy. You know that game?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
The one where you rollerball.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like
Rolling
really
things and
quirky.
making stars out of them.
Yes, I really like quirky games like this, like Patapon. You know the PSP game, like the one where it's a rhythm game where you control a tribe of small characters. Maybe I'm saying it wrong, but it's called Patapon. Patapon. A
I
I know what you're talking
PS.
about. Yeah, I
oh
played that one. I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
It's like one of my
I'm drawing
favorite.
a blank on that, but he does, so it's
yeah.
okay.
I'm really into this kind of. I like to try all sorts of games. So, but it's hard to like. Recently, I've been playing maybe like the game I go to these days to play with my friends is Overwatch. Like it's really classic. And today I've been playing some Oxygen Not Included. Do you know that
Oh,
game?
that's a fun one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard about that, but I don't think I've actually seen that in action.
It's
So,
like
again,
a
there's too many. There are so many games. Like it's easy to pass by something.
oh,
So,
absolutely.
but I might check into it now that I know of it. So,
It's a very interesting game. Like you have to build a base, but it's very um, like there's a lot of physics and math involved, so that you always run into problems, and you have to build stuff to solve your problems. For example, running out of oxygen is the first one, and you have to build a machine to create more oxygens and stuff. So it's really fun. Like you feel smart. You feel smart when you solve your problems. Uh,
okay.
yeah. I don't think I'm answering your question. See, I'm just
No,
mentioning
you've
random.
answered it. You answered it. You said the question was some of your favorite games, not all of them. So you've done an adequate job of answering the question.
Dragon Age
Um,
fans, get your points.
ah, yes. Uh, so
Okay.
you guys see?
I was trying to formulate how best to succinctly answer this question. I'm not sure if I'm going to succeed, so bear with me.
This- yeah.
I mean, but since you brought up Overwatch, I mean, I love Overwatch as well. There are actually a couple of Easter eggs. The biggest one is probably the name of the ship that Ensign Young is on, the Raptora. That's a direct reference to the suit system that Farah uses. So there's that, and then there's another character in there that um, shares the first name. Actually, she's the security officer, and so she shares the first name of Farah's mother, who is the healing sniper lady.
Oh, okay.
The best
You know
grandma,
what? I
as
was not sure those were references to Overwatch, actually. I never asked you. I thought maybe it was something else. So that's
well, I
funny.
do love. So this is like so completely tangential, but I mean, I do love raptors, so like eagles and hawks and like birds of prey. So like when I was like looking for a name for the ship, I was like, well, I mean to call it like the eagle, that just sounds so plain. I mean, NASA's used the eagle so much. I mean, we're not going to go that route. And so like when I was because I was actually gifted the Overwatch art book for Christmas
Yeah.
by my husband a couple of years back, and I was actually looking through it and I'm like, oh yeah, the Raptora. I like it. I'm going to take it and use it. And I mean, like sometimes, I mean, that is, I mean, not everything that a writer does is glamorous, where we just pull ideas out of our heads and then go, be free and come to fruition. No, sometimes it's a lot of Googling and a lot of research, and then and then like you like distill it and boil it down to, okay, we'll just go with that. Let's just move on.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, I understand that fully.
uh, Gosh, my favorite video games. Well, I mean, I can talk about my first love, and my very first love was, I mean, imagine like 4-year-old, little me sitting or pretty much hovering over my brother's shoulder and watching him play Privateer, which was from the Wing Commander series.
Oh,
Oh,
So I don't know if
I
you guys
remember
remember.
that.
Yeah, I don't know if
I
you guys
remember.
remember
yeah,
Wing Commander from like the early '90s.
yeah,
No, I
yeah,
And
knew. My brother,
yeah,
my
yeah,
brother used to have it, and
yeah.
yeah, I was the little
I
kid
remember.
watching. I was the little
yeah.
kid watching in my house.
hmm And I mean, that pretty much cemented me as a nerd, as a geek. I mean, just the idea that you can hop in a ship and go flying in some direction through the stars, taking out bad guys, doing good, righting wrongs, finding this, this great ancient mystery that's out there in the unknown regions, and then trying to solve it and save the galaxy. And you're like, and you're just this one privateer. To me, that was like mind blowing. So that was my first love. My brother and I still reference it heavily. I mean, when we were kids, we would actually use. I mean, we used to, like, just go around the house, and if we passed each other in the hallway, we'd actually like salute each other. Because I mean, yeah,
That's
I
so
know.
cute.
It's.
That's extremely cute.
I should
Yeah.
also point out that my brother is 9 years older than I am, so
Oh.
he was literally my big brother. Um,
Oh, it
so that was my
happens.
first love. The other one that actually directly influenced this game was the Portal series. So Portal 1 and Portal 2, and especially Portal 2. That was where I mean, that was what introduced me to the fact that and also spoilers if you haven't played Portal and or Portal 2 by this point. If you haven't yet, but you were planning on it, shut your ears. Um, but that was actually where I got the idea that that a brain, or that your thoughts and your personality and whatnot are all that they're all essentially software, and the brain is hardware to run that software. And I thought that was just an interesting concept, that you could actually try and download someone with all their thoughts and feelings and their personality and whatnot, and download it into something else, even if the body decays. So, and it's actually funny because the Chinese phrase, or well, yeah, it's a phrase. It's not a word because it's two words. I mean, the phrase for computer literally translates to electronic brain. And there's all sorts of metaphysical and philosophical stuff that we could get into, but I won't. Um, um, but yeah, I mean, that was kind of what influenced me to kind of think on those lines of what if this happened, or what if that happened with this sort of technology. I'm a huge Diablo fan. I loved especially Diablo 2.
All right.
Um,
I like the first one.
yeah, the first one was a lot of fun, where you just pick a character and it's like, okay, there's a problem, go fix it. Go hack and slash your way through demons and undead and whatnot,
Uh,
and
the universe was so good. Whenever I hear this type of music, the guitar music, I always feel like, I want to play the Diablo.
yes.
That's a side effect.
It's the side effect of playing the game. That's all.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a Pavlovian response, whereas you hear that song, it's like, oh hey, I'm back in Tristram. I know we talked about Mass Effect, but before I actually got into Mass Effect, I played Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic. That was my
Yes,
Oh,
first.
me too.
I
Yeah,
clapped
that
for
was my
that one
introduction
too.
to
I
BioWare.
forgot that one.
That was like everybody's introduction to BioWare.
Yeah. Well, yeah, mine was Jade Empire, but that's just me. But yes.
Mine was never
Right.
winter, but yeah, okay.
I mean, just the idea that you could go on your own Jedi Star Wars
Yeah.
story and actually have what you say and what you do affect how you play your character, and how the universe, or how the game universe actually reacts to you, that is revolutionary. I was hooked. I couldn't get enough of it. I made so many characters, most of them light side because I just couldn't bring myself to do dark side.
Oh
Like,
no, you missed a lot of fun. Then you
Yeah.
have to go back and do the dark side. You
I
have to.
tried. I genuinely tried, and then
Look,
there was.
it's just it's a psychological thing. Like at any moment in time where you feel like you feel bad for doing something, just do it. You know it's not actually hurting anyone. Just do it. Just do the complete opposite of what you would normally do.
You know
That's
good
how.
well it's hurting the NPC.
I
Okay,
I
the non-player character, the non-important character at that point too. So that's fine.
I've had this conversation with friends, but actually I don't enjoy doing evil things in games. Like I have a friend who always shoots dogs in games.
Oh
I
no,
always
see that's
yell at him
different.
like I
Why?
That's
hate him
different.
for doing
That's
it.
just
That's
oh that's
evil.
just crazy. That's
Yes.
I mean,
I,
there's a difference in looking at it where you're fulfilling a purpose that has to be taken care of. One way or the other, it has to be done. It's either you got to do it the nice, long, slow, drawn out way, or you can do it the quick, simple, hurtful way. It's one of the two. And sometimes you just got to do the back. Like I've every time I play through a game that has multiple choices like that, I'll do the good run first,
yeah.
and then if the game interests me enough and I want to, I'll go back and do the negative side of it. See stuff like Fable, I won't do that with Fable. Once my character's done, I'm done with Fable. I'm not going back to it. But Knights of the Old Republic, especially the first one, I was so curious as to what the other side was. That's why I just had to
Yeah.
do it.
I
I
think
had
that's
There's
to
a
why I
lot
because
of
did
draw
mine. I
there.
did too. Because I did one
I
light,
did my
one dark.
I did male light side, and then I did my female dark side.
I
So,
try it. Like I always have friends who tell me, do the evil side, do it. But I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy being evil in games.
I
It
think I
depends
look.
on people.
It depends on people. I just look at it. I guess I try to get the because I like a lot of philosophical stuff anyway, and I kind of just see the what the philosophical differences are between the choices.
Yeah.
Right.
Like with toward the end of the Old Republic, the first one where you had the choice of helping those two tribes, helping the ones that believed in saving people, or and the ones that wanted to carnivorously eat the other ones. So
Right.
I remember that choice wholeheartedly, and I'm like, I know once I make this choice, characters that I really like, I'm going to have to kill. I was already prepped for it when I went for that because obviously they're not going to stand for what happened, but some characters are malleable and they'll follow you wherever, and others aren't. It's just, but it's seeing how all those different story threads played out is what made it interesting to me. That's why I ended up liking Loop so much. Is because like you could tell that there are so many different story threads and
Mm.
everything leads to a different direction. So it kind of, it's just like I like if I have the opportunity, I want to find out.
Absolutely. And actually, that leads me to and I swear this is my very last entry for the favorite games thing, is Deus Ex Human Revolution. I don't know if you guys played the
Yeah,
Deus Ex series or
I
whatnot,
have.
but uh, so I mean, we've already talked about BioWare and how you either go like Paragon or Renegade or Light Side, Dark Side, and whatnot, but it still seemed to kind of like one dimensional.
Yeah,
Because like I mean, like especially like in Mass Effect, where like like I mean, you can go Paragon or Renegade, but I mean, your squad's gonna follow you no matter what.
yeah.
I mean, you can choose not to recruit some of them, but that's kind of the extent of it. It's not like if you do something, they're just gonna leave. Um, and so with Deus Ex, especially in a Human Revolution, there's not so much as a reputation system, but there are instances where you can talk your way out of a situation,
Yeah.
and it gets you like I think the achievement's like silver tongued or something like that. But you actually have to choose responses based on what the person you're talking to is feeling. And that actually helped us flesh out the reputation or empathy system in Loop, was because you can't just, I mean, you're not just choosing, oh, this is the nice response, I'm going to go with that, this is the nice response, I'm going to go with that. I mean, we kind of wanted to make it more complex and more three-dimensional, where you had to respond to her in such a way that that suited the situation. So like if she was really in a crisis, really, falling apart at the seams and needed someone to bolster her, you would have to do that. And sometimes the super nice response was actually the wrong one to take, because you're either like coddling her, or or she calls you out on your BS, and she's like, don't patronize me, I'm having a crisis, or I'm having an existential crisis here, don't patronize me, that sort of a thing. And so it's not just a matter of saying like, nice things or mean things. It's actually a matter of listening to what she's saying or what the situation calls for and responding in kind. And And so like if you try to go, so if you try to like just stick with one path or another, it wouldn't work in your it just wouldn't work. And it's actually something that I learned from working at the public library. When I first started, I was like, okay, I'm going to be, very customer service oriented. I'm going to, help all the patrons. I'm going to be super nice. And you know what? There are some patrons, I mean, because when in the public library, literally anybody can come in the door at any time. And you have no idea what's going to come next. You have no idea who's going to be, the next person who asks you a reference question. And I mean, there are some people who do not need or do not want a super nice person. They just, it's like, hey, I'm looking for this. Okay, it's over here. Thanks. Goodbye. That's all they want. They don't want the super nice. They don't want the, the tour guide Barbie sort of thing. Some people don't require that. Some people do. And if you are like if you stick with like a, straight faced, straight, dry, cut and dry, like, okay, this is your question. I've answered it. Goodbye. They will also say, you provided bad customer service or you didn't provide, what they needed. And so that was what went into developing this, I don't know, we keep calling it a reputation system, but it's more than that. It's actually building a working relationship, a rapport with Ensign Young as you work through the game. And if you keep making mistakes because you are, adamant on sticking to one, I don't even know how you would call it, like a psychological profile, you just keep hitting dead ends, and you won't help her, and you won't get the information that you need, and without helping her, you can't help yourself complete the investigation.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, it also goes into, I mean, and this is a text-based game, so you can't hear how they're speaking, so you don't have any of those inflections to go off of, like, oh, they're speaking very, very fast, or they're speaking, very, very loudly or whatnot, so they must be angry, or, they're speaking very softly and they're kind of, hitching every so often, so they must be crying and very upset. You don't have any of those cues. I did a lot of my undergrad coursework in anthrolinguistics, and I actually did a paper on World of Warcraft and text-based communications, and seeing how people communicated with either like their raid members or guildmates or like various like social situations that you can find yourself in World of Warcraft, and seeing how differently people talked in each of those situations. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff that went into building Loop from the ground up that isn't quite apparent, because I mean, when you look at it, it's just an investigative sci-fi game. There's really not a whole lot to it. And I mean, in a lot of our ads and a lot of the talking points that we did was talking about like, the paths and the endings, and that you influence the game and you influence the story and stuff like that. But the major component is actually this thing where you can either learn or exercise that empathy part of your brain to actually listen to somebody who's going through a crisis and helping them out. And given our current social climate and how everything feels like, what's the term, dumpster fire? I think that's the popular term for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a nice way of saying it.
It feels like
that's the current clean way of saying it.
Yeah, that's the current clean way of saying it. I mean, it kind of feels like kindness and empathy and actually listening to one another is in short supply. And we're actually kind of hoping that, yeah, it's cool. You've got this expansive science fiction universe that may or may not be in the near future. You have the ship, you have a protagonist, you have this great mystery to unravel, but also, learning to actually listen to somebody and to help them out when they need it. Like, we've actually joked about how, maybe in a year or so we'll have a bunch of like Fortune 500 companies using our game for, human resources purposes, to teach people, it's like, hey, how to be a better employee and coworker. Play this game.
Hey, that's a good strategy for marketing, honestly.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys pay us for the game. Share it to your employees. It's fine. We'll help you out there. based on their choice, like, and you can set it up for them. Say based on the choices that they make, you can tell these particular psychological profiles of these employees. And there you go. Honestly, that's actually an ingenious idea.
Got a question. Got one question.
Yes.
Yes.
So, since this is a sci-fi game and I'm currently hooked on Picard,
Me too.
Yay.
what is your sci-fi go-to series?
I'll let Aline go first.
um, is it a Star Trek versus Star Wars
Oh no.
question?
No, just
Or-
in general, because
Just
you got
in general.
Star Trek, you got Star Wars, you got Battlestar Galactica, you got
Babylon
Andromeda,
5, yeah.
Babylon 5. There's so many out there. Like, which one would you like? Like, would be your preferred one to delve into? That's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, for me, probably Star Trek, but I'm not like a Star Trek fan. I have to tell you because I have friends who are really, really, really into any of those universe, but I'm not this kind of person who really uh, goes on the wiki and stuff. But I mean, the universe is very optimistic and very complex, and that's probably yeah. I would say it's Star Trek.
I'm the
Okay,
same way.
quick follow up. Quick follow up to that, because this is which Star Trek?
Ah!
Which se-
Why you doing that?
I'm just interested.
Why you doing
Come
that?
No,
I
it's
mean,
Doing
important.
that?
You knew it was coming.
I know.
Oh no. That's the trick question actually.
I mean, look,
No.
I'm not the one that's going to be running around with pitchforks over it. It's
Yeah.
just
Uh, well, as I said, I really like Picard, so that's probably anything with him.
so
uh,
like the next generation and
Generation.
Next
Picard.
generation, yeah.
Okay. I mean, me personally, I'm more of a Deep Space Nine fan. Didn't,
Okay.
didn't
Yeah.
really care much for Voyager, but
Mm.
I think that's just because Voyager's story got too convoluted itself.
Yeah.
But Deep Space Nine kind of kept on a particular track, and they stuck with it for the most part. And just like the Next Generation, they stuck with their regular track. But like, even the original, I'm not so much of a big fan of the original, but then again, might just be because I didn't really grow up with the original. I grew up with Next Generation and forward. So
Yeah.
Because the original was
Yeah.
before my time, so I was a next generation kid. So that's why when they said, "Oh, we're doing Picard," I'm like, "Well, CBS, you got my money." So
Yeah, it's same for me. Well, actually, the spirit the first one was really nice, but it was kind of the same. But if you watch the episodes now, it's really old fashioned and kind of I don't
It's
know,
campy.
very yeah.
It is
that's
camp,
that's
yeah.
it's very, but a lot of stuff back then was. So
Yeah.
I can't really blame them for it.
I mean, that's
Mm.
part of the charm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
I mean, I will give the original series points for, Leonard Nimoy as Spock. I love Spock.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's like fawning over, Captain Kirk and stuff like that. No, please give me
I know.
Spock.
Yeah.
Like Spock was the one that held the team together. We all
Oh,
know.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Especially when you start watching the episodes, you're like, "Oh, clearly,
Like,
Spock
look.
needs to be captain."
Like,
No, I'm also a Next Generation kid. I grew up watching Next Generation, and all that sort of stuff, admiring, Captain Picard, and it's actually funny going back to my anthropology coursework as an undergrad. What's funny is that like 3 or 4 of the upper division courses that I took would start each quarter with the Darmok and Shalad episode of Next Generation as an example of, this is what we do as anthropologists and so on and so forth. And like the first time I was super excited. I was so stoked. The second time I was like, okay. The third or fourth time I actually went to sleep because I had seen it so many times that I could pretty much quote it verbatim. And like these were, like it was all within like the same major, but it was different instructors, different course focuses and stuff like that. But I mean, it was a great episode to kind of encapsulate what we do as anthropologists, like how we communicate with a completely new culture and a completely new people, and how we approach it as like, I mean, it starts off hostile, but then they find a common ground through telling stories, and I mean, it's beautiful. And I mean, I think, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I stayed with writing, was so that, because I mean, there is great power in stories. And I think there's actually a Dragon Age quote about stories from Varric, because he was the guy who loved to spin stories and whatnot about, Hawk and stuff like that. There is a great power in stories, and you know, I have to admit I'm a bit of an idealist. So
Yeah.
stuff like, rainbows and sunshine, and we're all one people, and we can all just get along if we just
Yeah.
work together.
Mm,
I'm very much a proponent of that.
yeah,
I
me
mean,
too.
look, that was all of Shepard's purpose in Mass Effect, is basically to get everybody to hold hands and sing "Kumbaya" together for a while. So,
And then the Reapers came.
oh man, when I do my video on Mass Effect, especially when I do want to talk about Andromeda, oh gosh, there's a lot to be covered with that. So much to be covered with that, but that's a whole side note. That's a conversation that can take hours to go through. So we'll not deal with that.
But aside from Star Trek, I am a huge fan of Stargate SG-1. I don't know if
Nice.
I don't know if
Nice.
anyone else has watched that, but
I
Yeah.
I mean,
used to watch
again,
it almost faithfully.
I
I've
mean,
seen
MacGyver.
my dad.
MacGyver. I mean, you can't go wrong with MacGyver. Sam
Yeah.
Porter
Okay,
is
okay.
amazing. Daniel Jackson is, I mean, one of the reasons why I actually went into anthropology. Because again, he was kind of that. I mean, he was kind of like the soft nerdy boy of the series, but I mean, he was also like the moral. He was the moral fiber of SG-1,
Mm.
and it was nice to actually see that in action. That yes, you can be a complete cinnamon roll and idealist and still, get stuff done. Um, and then there's Teal'c. You can't not love Teal'c.
I don't
Yeah.
think there's anybody that actually disliked that character.
Yeah.
I have not. I've met no one that has disliked that character. Like, and I don't know if such a person exists, and if they do, I pray for them.
Yeah.
That's, that's all I can do for is say a prayer and walk away, and
Yeah.
just don't let nobody else know, because you'll probably be okay. So we got that covered. I might flip a couple of these questions because I think one. No, I can leave them in the order they're in. All right. So, how did you find yourselves in getting into game development?
We already kind of covered that, didn't we?
I think you kind of covered partly,
Mm-hmm.
but like what? Okay, a better way would say what inspired the idea to get into game development. That would probably be a better way to phrase it.
Um, for me, it was always it's probably a lot of people have it like you just find yourself daydreaming about a situation you're in, and then you're thinking, oh, this could be a game. This could be a fun game. Something very stupid, like I don't know.
Actually, I have done that multiple times.
Yeah,
I,
see. So I'm telling you, I think a lot. That's for lots of people. So that's how you end up actually thinking about. Well, why not make it? Why not make this game? Yeah.
oh man, because I have a hilarious game idea. Just and I've done a podcast on it, but the idea was based on seeing a sour monkey face. Like, it was a picture, it was a drawn picture with a
Mhm.
monkey with a very sour face. I remember the background was yellow or something to it. And I came up with a character, a concept, a story.
Nice.
It's hilariously, it's called Pooh Face the Monkey. And it's on my channel. It's an old video because there was a podcast that was done with some people I used to talk with. But like it just came up. Like I just saw that picture and instantly I had a game in my mind, how it would look, what the game would play like, what the voices and sound effects would be. I had everything automatically mapped out within 5 minutes of seeing this picture.
Wow.
I still remember every detail of it too. That's the bad thing.
See,
No, that's awesome.
yeah. But why not make the game then?
Most of it is me needing to learn certain things to get it done, or either getting on a team that would be willing to
Mm,
hear it out and work on it. This is one of those
yeah.
two situations that has to
Mm.
happen, and I'm
Yeah.
working on the first part. The second part hasn't come to fruition yet, so we'll see. I don't know. Maybe I might slide the idea to Tom Fulp and the Behemoth and see if they'll do it.
Okay, let's
Like, hey,
see.
you could take this one and do it for free. But like, all I want to know is that it exists. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
honestly, I think that's how that's a lot of how we kind of run things at AdvinWorks is that we have
Yeah.
ideas and we just kind of throw them at a wall. It's like, okay, what's sticking? Can we make it happen?
Yeah.
Okay, we've kind of made it happen. Does it actually work? Okay, it did
The
work. Okay, we'll actually launch it. Okay, it didn't quite work. We'll scrap it.
Okay.
yeah, that's
Actually, I
basically
can see that
how
happening with a lot of companies.
but that's basically how we run things. We just come up with a lot of ideas and yeah, we try to make them work. We just anyone can come with a game idea, and
Yeah.
they can be completely crazy. But you try and you test it, and sometimes it works.
Mhm. Okay, I'm good with that. All right, so that kind of clears out another question because it's covered that already. Um, so how did you? No, you already did this. You already kind of went over that, so there's no point in asking that one.
Hmm.
Uh, this was the interesting one right here. This is definitely the interesting one. What game series besides stuff that you've already worked on do you wish you could have some sort of influence on?
Mm. I see. You can answer this one. You
Well, I'd written down a couple of things, and I was like, does D&D count?
It counts.
It
It counts.
does.
Or Star Wars? Does that count?
Majorly counts.
Yes, it does.
I mean, I would love to do like a D&D module of some sort. I mean, I DM for a group of my friends, and I do homebrew stuff. The one that we have done a few sessions on is something that's called Incarcerated, where I actually start the characters, I start all the PCs by throwing them all into jail, so they don't have any armor, no weapons, nothing, and they need to actually do a jailbreak. Um,
Oh, that sounds interesting.
yeah, and I mean, it's and they're all there at that town for different reasons. There's some shady stuff going on in the town and whatnot, and they're supposed to figure out why they were thrown in jail, who threw them in jail, where it's where the hell is their stuff, um, and I mean, and again, there's like this whole mystery to unfold as they try to break out of jail. We haven't gotten very far because we're all, unfortunately, adults with busy schedules
With a
and
lot of
whatnot,
things
and
on your, yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, and just haven't been able to get things together. But
Okay.
yeah, it's like this whole universe that I'd created for them. And then I mean, there's like another one that I had. Anybody else hear that?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
I heard a little bit of a pop. Is that what you're talking about?
Okay, it stopped.
Okay.
So whoever pushed the button, good job.
Might have been some feedback. That's all.
And then I have another homebrew that I'm doing. That's I love the Cthulhu mythos. I'm a huge fan of H.P. Lovecraft's work. Not a huge fan of the guy himself, unfortunately, but
Yeah, you
but
gotta
his work and
separate the
stuff.
artist from the work. That's
Right.
all.
Um, and it's actually set in turn of the century San Francisco, about 5 or 6 years after the great San Francisco earthquake. And I mean, it's a huge thing for me because one, it lets me delve into Chinese American history, and it's also where I mean, I'm actually from California, so I'm familiar with the area, familiar with the history, and all sort of stuff. And yes, there will be old gods coming into play, and you'll get to meet a fictional Hearst ancestor and stuff like that. But yeah, I would love to do like a D&D sort of thing. And of course, Star Wars. Who wouldn't want to be able to make something in the Star Wars universe?
Um, not Disney right now.
That's a whole other
they've made some very interesting choices, to say the least.
They have.
I'm not going to go any further than that.
Interesting is a nice way to say that.
Look, like we know, like we say Nintendo has ninjas. I don't want to find out what Disney's ninjas look like. Okay,
Nope.
that's all. That's all I'm gonna leave it at.
And Disney, if you want to go at anybody, Andre's YouTube channel.
Nah, don't you do that. Don't do that. Nope. Andre is staying out of it because I don't want to end up like Kingdom Hearts.
That's
And on that note, the Wingin' It podcast has now been banned in 18 countries.
We'll find out which other ones we'll get banned from in the long run, but it's okay. Oh man, let's hope that my joke actually just stays a joke and nothing actually happens. There we go.
Well, we are all witnesses.
Man.
All been recorded.
Oh,
This
is
will be the next premise of maybe this will be the premise of the next video game that I do. You know, what happened to Andre?
I could co-write that.
It all started with a podcast.
You know, though, the strangest but most interesting game premises come out of left field, out of nowhere. So that would actually probably make for a really interesting game.
Do it like in the style of the Stanley Parable.
Oh yeah, that would actually work. Yeah. That would work. Or sort of like a whodunit type story.
Yeah.
So, but I could go with that. I wouldn't mind. I would not actually mind writing a story. I actually did it when I was a teenager, even though it sounds morbid. I would not actually have a problem with writing a story in which I was the victim of murder. I wouldn't have a problem doing it.
Wasn't there a DS game about that a few years back? Ghost Trick.
I think there was.
I think it was called Ghost Trick or whatever. Yeah, where you had to figure out your own death.
Yeah, you had to figure out your own murder and point clues to people so that they could find out who murdered you.
Yeah.
So,
That's
so I would not mind writing a story like that and then having it be a game. I'd be all over doing something like that.
There's actually a board game that's that runs on that very that actually runs on that very premise. I think it's Mysterium. I don't know if you guys are into board games, but Mysterium is it's a murder mystery, and there is one person who has a screen, and you have to leave like these cryptic clues that people have to decode. So it's like so it's on these cards, and you have to pick out the cards that that point to how you were killed or something like that, and you
okay.
like phases, and then you actually and then like the players have to figure out who killed you, and one of the players is actually the killer, but they don't.
It's sort of like Clue, but you're looking for your own murderer.
Yes,
okay.
It is very fun, very cool. Yeah, this is what happens. Like you play this game, it's like, you know what, this would be a really cool mechanic for ...
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
See, I'm good with murder mysteries. I mean, it's just interesting to write it from the perspective of the victim.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this guy murdered me. I have to find out how I'm going to tell these people. Oh, that's you know what? Because the game that you talked about, you had to possess people. If I remember correctly, you had to possess people and then drag them to the clues. So yeah, I'd be all over something like that. Be fun.
I'm not
I don't
sure.
know if we could title it "Who What Happened to Andre." We might have to change the title because I mean I don't think Google likes me too much either. So, what corporation took out the game idea guy? There we go. That's that would be the tagline.
Oh
But
boy, the trouble we're about to get into. All right.
Moving right along.
all right. So,
I,
well, the,
is it only me or ST's voice is very quiet for me?
um,
is my voice quiet?
No,
nope.
you guys are fine for me. ST, can you try speaking?
Am I quiet?
Oh, you are a
Yes.
little low.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You are a little low now.
If I mute and unmute, did that
Oh,
help?
Yep, that
that's
Ew.
helps.
much
There you go.
better, much
Much
better.
better. Yeah, much
Have you
better.
tried
That's
hello ID
extremely
password
clear.
off and on again?
That's how it
Hey,
works.
some that look. That's the old basic fix it method.
Oh, absolutely.
Turn it off and turn it back on. Maybe it'll reset. But we'll go ahead and get to the last question because a lot of the other stuff already got covered. So I think we knocked out 5 questions without even having to go over them. Are there any future titles that you would like to talk briefly about? If you can, I understand you guys work on a bunch of different things and some stuff you can't just go ahead and yelp out to the world. So if you have anything you can talk about that you would be interested in divulging some details on.
Um, well, to be honest, at the moment we can't really talk about our projects as yeah, we're just about done with Loop. We're still working on bugs, and so every other project in the company is really just starting right now. So
Okay.
it's very too early to talk about it. I'm sorry.
No problem.
No problem.
That's why it was an if.
Yeah.
Okay, so I
But
have nothing
lots
else
of
to really ask.
okay.
I don't have any other questions. Like if there's anything that you want to talk about at all, we can do that really quickly, or we can wrap up.
I don't think I've got anything else. I mean, I think I've talked quite enough, to be honest.
Yeah, but you were
uh,
entertaining.
did Justine you know Justine, she's our marketing
She's our
Mhm.
person.
marketing maven.
Did she tell you about our company and how we started it? I don't know if you're interested in this.
You could actually talk about that. I mean, I know personally from checking your website out, and she did give me a few details. But
I
if you would like to, you can go ahead.
It was more because earlier you kind of asked how we got into game development, and I thought, well, um, that's basically we started our own company. We decided to make games, and then we just did. So I thought it was maybe an answer to that question. How also you in the question you sent us, you asked for advice for people who want to make games, and that's actually my advice is just make them. So
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
just
that's why I
for
kind of took that question out because you kind of covered it
yeah.
when you were talking about. So I was like, yeah, we can skip by that one.
Yeah. So basically, our CEO and our CEO was an ex coworker of mine, and but we used to work in a company that's not really well. We used to work in R&D for a big telecom company actually, and then he went to work for Ubisoft, the big game developer, and then he worked for Lionhead, and and they but back then he already started making games on the side, like personal projects. Like besides working on big games, he just wanted to keep coding, keep making games, and so that's how he recruited me. Like I was more part of the side project as a hobby. What we did, like how we started Loop, was more like a hobby. And at some point, we just took the plunge and quit the day job and went for it.
Okay.
And so that's how we started our company. It was 2 years ago. We got some fundings, and now we are. How many are we? We are 13, something like this.
Yeah, I think
And
there's maybe
so,
12 or 13 of us now.
hmm
Okay,
and
where do
so,
I apply?
actually, you could. We are quite open. We want like we like when you start your own company, you can do whatever you want. So our idea was to think there are people all over the world who love games, who are talented, and why limit ourselves with some place, some city or anything. So we decided that we could work remotely. Now with internet, anyone can work with you. So that's how I work in London. Essie is in the US, and a lot of our colleagues are in France. And when we open a job, we recruit worldwide. So you could actually apply. And we're really into people who have a lot of ideas. So that kind of fits.
And
I,
there you go.
I,
There you go.
that's literally my YouTube moniker.
Yeah.
You didn't know?
I don't want to tell you how many times I have stated a game should be developed a certain way, and then a game comes out that has been made that way.
Not to mention, the game developers actually follow him on Twitter, and then poof, 2 months later.
We're not going to get into that conversation thread because I called them out and they still haven't responded to me. So I'm going to
Capcom. Oh, I'm sorry. I had to cough. Sorry about that.
That was a strange cough there.
I was going to say, you don't know it, but this was actually, I mean, this entire, you thought you were interviewing us, but we've been interviewing you.
Oh, so that's the plot twist here.
Yep, plot twist.
No. Should I do like the Krogan and hit my fist together and
Oh, absolutely.
be like Grunt and Rex?
Oh, absolutely.
But I mean, I personally been looking for ways to spread more of the stuff that I like to do anyway. So I'm a heavy writer myself personally. So that's why it's been interesting. And once I saw Loop, I was like, this is like, if I could have made something like this myself, like I could see why it has the number of endings it has, because I would be the same way, being exhausted on figuring out how many ways it could end, so that not everybody ends up with the same ending, like Mass Effect with the 3 different colors. But
we weren't gonna go that route. I was trying so hard in talking about the game and all sorts of, and not bringing up Mass Effect 3 and the tricolored endings.
Oh man.
Mass Effect 3. The best game ever to the last 20 minutes.
I
I mean, it
wouldn't
helped.
say even the last 20 minutes. The last 10 minutes. It's the best game of the last 10 minutes. Then you're left with a choice. And 2 out of the 3 of those choices, you automatically die. I'm like,
Again, spoilers if you haven't played after all these years.
there have been too many people to complain about it. I don't know if that's much spoiler. There have been so many people that complained about. I knew what the ending of the game was before that game was even out, because of those complaints. I was like, wow, that's nice. Thank you so much.
I mean, something that did help was actually looking at the entirety of Mass Effect 3 as an ending. like as an end, like as like the capstone to the trilogy, like not just the last 10 or 20 minutes, where you make the choice, but the entirety of the game as an ending to Shepard's saga. Like after I figured that, I was like, okay, I feel better about things.
It did help
Yeah.
when they added the extended cut stuff in, because that kind of fleshed the ending out and it wasn't
Yeah.
so brief.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mass Effect, how we love D.
So it was still a great series.
Yeah, it's a great series.
Yeah.
Great series.
It just
Uh,
kind of fizzled out.
Did not stick the landing.
Actually, I was one of the least mad persons because I thought Shepard had to die. Actually, I didn't see how a happy ending would look like, but I was just sad. It was. I mean, I was thinking, I'm sad right now after seeing the ending, but I can't think of an ending that would not have made me sad. So
No, like with the character,
Yeah,
I
that's
can
true.
understand. I can understand with
yeah,
the character of Shepard as a whole. Yeah,
yeah,
Shepard had to,
yeah.
may have had to die, but when that's the only choice, just about like
Yeah.
can't have any hope, none
None.
whatsoever.
Nah. Hope. All right, yeah. You better hope we get a 4.
And Andromeda ain't for.
Yeah.
Andromeda, Max Effect Andromeda itself is a whole. Again, I have to do that video, but it's a whole other. It's like they start in the same place, but Andromeda is way over here, off the radar, and I think the biggest problem with that is that a lot of stuff that is talked about in finality in the original trilogy, you come to find out, oh, there was always an alternative. It's just like,
What? You're like, what?
how did no one else know of this alternative? All of these people here, no one else knew of this alternative. No one. But then it's like, okay, our shadow broker knew about this happening, didn't say a word to anybody else. Like, Liara, talk.
See, I haven't played through Andromeda because when it came out, I was mired in trying to write this game. But I mean, I'd kind of delved into it. I got through like maybe the first 20 or 30 minutes of it. So I have the so I know like the gist and the premise of it and stuff like that. And I mean, I mean, the way I look at it, and the point that you bring up, like that, that there is an alternative that we could just, why don't we just leave this galaxy and the Reapers would come, and it's like, oh, hey, there's no one home. What the hell happened to everybody? And it's like, well, okay, guess we'll just go back to dark space.
That's the big thing. I'm like, why didn't everybody just migrate? Like, if you want to live, migrate.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's also a matter of just wanting to live and preserve what you know and what you already have. And I mean, that's a mentality that I see with a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people who, come into the library and they go, aren't you afraid of becoming obsolete because of ebooks and the internet and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, because you're always going to need a human to help you figure out what's real when you Google something. What's a good source, what's a bad source. Ebooks are one format, but there are people who still prefer hardcover or a solid thing of binding and paper and a cover in their hands, or an audiobook or whatever it is. I understand that mentality of wanting to save what you already have.
Well, that's a good perspective to explain it. But I think, honestly, if a lot of those people if they had known of the option, they'd have been like, okay, chop chop, we're going.
Well, you have to remember, when they left, it was during Mass Effect 2, right?
Yeah,
there were still a lot of
Yeah.
I mean, there were still a lot of people who were still in denial about the Reapers and whatever. So just I mean I just got I've been replaying through the Mass Effect series, and I'm in 3 right now, and there are still people denying that there are Reapers, and it's like, dude, do you not see the giant?
Yeah.
I'm like, look, we see whole planets going under. There's no way they don't exist.
Yeah, it's like
You keep
you
telling
can't deny
yourself
this
that.
anymore.
But I'm of the thought process of just lock them into a room, all of those people, and leave them and be done. Like, we'll just lock you all here and we'll leave. You can stay here and pretend that they don't exist. We're gone. Bye. Like, we'll lock you guys away. And we'll take whatever we need. Leave you some stuff behind because we're not cruel. Bye. That's it. But if once I actually complete Andromeda, that's when I'm going to do that video, and I have a feeling I'm going to rip this game apart.
Oh,
And
Just
my.
I
based
have
on
a
this.
feeling I'm going to be getting popcorn and watching.
Because I still have a couple more idea videos I have to do for Mass Effect, but once I finish Andromeda, it's not looking pretty. It wasn't looking pretty. It wasn't looking pretty 10 minutes in. But I'm stubborn, and I'm going to finish it just like I did Sonic 06, even though that tore me apart inside. But hey,
Awesome soundtrack, though. Awesome soundtrack.
okay, but I can say the same thing about Mass Effect Andromeda. The soundtrack, the music in the game, and the sound effects are great.
Mhm.
Props to
Until
the sound team.
Props to the sound team. They did an awesome job. But when you can have emotions, just you can hear emotions, but all of this up here stays monotone. I'm like, there's no emotion in these characters' faces. All of the Asari look almost exactly identical, outside of a few splashes of paint thrown on their face. I don't. There's so much I could rip that game apart. And I hate doing it when I like something, but it's gotta be done. It's gotta be done. I'm compelled. But I think we can go ahead and wrap it up because we've kind of run over a lot of stuff, and you guys got to hear me ramble on for no reason. So hey, it was a good podcast.
That was not rambling on for no good
Yeah.
reason. There's always a good reason.
No. I typically ramble, and I'm aware of it, so I'll accept it.
Oh, well, that was fun. And thank you guys for joining. We do appreciate it. It was a very good conversation. I'm actually looking forward to what everybody out in the comments thinks. We're going to be leaving links to the website in the description below. So, any final thoughts, Andre? I'll let you start off.
Wow, this is one of those times where I feel like I don't have anything to say. That's weird. Like, but honestly, if anything, I'm just going to say if you are interested in a game with multiple story threads, even if you okay, if you're a person that likes to read a lot, this is definitely something for you. I'd say go ahead, get it. It's on iOS for $5.99. They're working on the Android build. Again, as I said at the start of the podcast, when that drops, I will do a video on my channel talking about it so that everybody knows. I was just one of the lucky ones that got the Android build early, even though they're still working on it. But there you go. I don't have a whole lot more to say. So,
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys for having us here.
Yeah.
No
it is
problemo.
not a problem. Definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely. So we will see you guys on the next vid. Peace.
Peace out, everybody.
Bye.
And